Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my super specific Indie Book Awards. Because why not? So, when it came time for the nominations of the 2021 Goodreads Choice Awards, BookTube responded, as it usually does, with outrage and general derision for the awards as a whole. If you haven't been around BookTube, basically, Goodreads Choice Awards is to BookTube as the Grammys is to music critics. We don't really like it. We complain about it every time it pops up, but we can't stop talking about it because it's one of the biggest awardsy things that happens in our community. And honestly, this year, I could not even name for you one winner. I was not even aware. All I was aware of was a vague sense of drama, as one popular white male author was like, how did I not get nominated? And then he was like, and how did this dude not get nominated? And then that dude got a lot of hate. But that dude hadn't actually said anything and had actually, in fact, just lost like his daughter, and so people were hating on a grieving father, and it turned into this whole thing. And I remember all of that more than any book that won. So I realized I want to do my own awards just for fun, because if we all agree that they're kind of pointless, I mean, the majority of people that vote in the Goodreads Choice Awards haven't even read all of the books in the areas they're voting for. I'm gonna come up with my own. And of course, it's gonna be for indie books, because like 90% of my channel is indie books. But I thought to myself, I don't just want to give awards for like, oh, my favorite indie sci-fi of 2021. Because first of all, how would I even decide that? So I'm like, no, I'm going to make super niche, very niche awards. Not so niche that they can't theoretically apply to other books in the future should I decide to do this again for 2022, but niche enough that it's very clear that it's kind of jokey and we're just gonna have fun with it and talk about books that clearly I have not reviewed, because that was the other big part about this. I have noticed that when I talk a lot about indie books, even outside of reviews, I usually end up talking a lot about review books, and to a certain extent that makes sense, because the act of writing a 5 to 7 paragraph written review and then doing like a 10 to 15 minute video review, obviously those books just stick in my mind more by the sheer nature of having given more thought to them. But I've read other books that I haven't gotten for review that I still want to give some kind of shout out to. So admittedly, I kind of worked backwards and found books that I wanted to highlight and then came up with awards for them. But fingers crossed, I want to bring this back in the future, and I really want to see if I can't use these awards again. But with no further ado, let's jump right in. First up is an award that will most likely come back again if I decide to do this in the future, because I have been reading so much polyam romance, and this is the award for the book that makes me most wish I was in a polycule. Low-key, I don't actually want to be in one. One person maintaining a connection with is enough work for me. But sometimes I wonder. And the winner of this is written by Catherine Moon. This is a dark academia paranormal romance all about a young woman named Joanna who leaves her tiny little sleepy rural town and goes to this college town, because of dark academia, to work as a librarian. She's not exactly sure how she got the job, because she's so sure that she doesn't really have anything magic-y in her. And this is a very much witch-focused school. But she gets in, and not only does she get in, she catches the eye of 3 separate professors who just all happen to be in the same coven. Now, in this world, a coven is actually the name for a 4-person group marriage, and it does specifically need to be 4 people. The world building isn't in depth on why, but they do hint at the fact that they need a 4th to kind of complete them, and for reasons that aren't necessarily explained, like they want it to be a woman despite the fact that all 3 of them are bisexual. Maybe it's because they're bisexual. I'm never exactly sure if Joanna is bisexual or straight and poly. Can you be straight and poly? Is that the word? I'm not sure. But there's a whole thing where when you have a potential coven mate, like things kind of like happen at first glance. Not exactly love at first sight, but there's something about it where you're suddenly low-key obsessed with this person for undefinable reasons, and they've been looking for their 4th for forever, and 2 of them have thought they might have found a possible 4th, but Callum, the brooding one with the tragic past, of course, has never had a connection with any of them. but he has the connection with Joanna. And obviously other like mystical paranormal things happen, and there's intrigue and kidnappings and da-da-da-da. But like, we can't go into that. This isn't the award for the book that had all the most things. It's for the polycule. And I loved this polycule. I like the concept in general of it being so normal as to be well accepted, that at no point did they have to like fight for the polyam side of the relationship. It was normal. There was still homophobia, oddly enough. Later on in the series, you see that one of the side characters in the series sees covens as basically him and his 3 wives, who must all be like subjugated to him. But obviously he's written off as a villain, so it's fine. But in general, I loved the group dynamic. I loved how the series as a whole, and yes, I did finish it. I started it last year and I finished it last year. I mean, there's only 4 books, but that's still a sign of how much I liked it. They each have individual relationships and then also a vibe of a coven as a whole. And it was weird to me because when I went back and I looked at the first book, it had actually labeled this series as reverse harem. And this book does not read as reverse harem to me, because my understanding of reverse harem is that it was more that paramour, metamor dynamic of polyamory, where you had one woman, because reverse, who had romantic relationships with multiple men who all agreed to have romantic relationships with the same woman, but did not themselves have romantic relationships with each other. They were each other's metamors. Like, you know, the joke is there was no crossing of the swords. But in this book, everyone is literally sleeping with everyone else. There's very clearly romantic connections and sexual connections between all 4 of them. So I would not categorize this as reverse harem. Although if you're just doing it for those ESO figures, I get it. But in general, I really liked this one. I'm low-key sad the series is over. I might have to look up another one because it was just perfection. Up next is the book that inspired me to make a video essay. Will I actually make the video essay? Irrelevant. The inspiration at least is there, and whether or not it convalesces into an actual video, it was nice to be inspired. And the winner of this is, of course, Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This is a book series that exploded on Book Talk in 2021, though it had been talked about on BookTube a little bit before then. It was really 2021 and Book Talk that made this book blow up in very gigantic ways that I don't think the author herself was ever really expecting. So this is a sci-fi romance series all about a group of women who are kidnapped by bad aliens, then crash down on the planet with these good aliens. They're blue himbos, they have horns and weird junk, and it's a lot of fun. But the author accidentally put in a key piece of world building that actually makes everything dark and sinister, because Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon is not a lighthearted romp of a sci-fi romance. No! It is a sci-fi horror about a twisted breeding cult about this group of aliens shoved together and forced by an evil, faceless parasite to breed against their will. And I know that sounds weird, but honest to God, if you know anything about the world building of Not Hoth, it actually makes a lot of sense, because in this world, to survive on Not Hoth, as the humans call it, a very icy planet, you have to have this parasite, like literally injected into you to gain the natural abilities to withstand the cold and survive. But these parasites then decide that they want you to sleep with other people and make babies. I say other people. This is a very hetero series. As I've gotten to book 7, and there's a single mention of anything queer at all on either side. All innately heteronormative hetero. Maybe it gets better later on. I'm willing to hope. But for now, very hetero. However, once you have this resonance and it happens and you resonate with someone, if you don't have sex with them and conceive a child, you die. It kills you. The parasite kills you if you do not let yourself conceive a child. That's mental. That's horrible. That's a sci-fi horror. And while the main romances of this book are all cute and fun and consensual, there are side characters that are forced into horrific abusive relationships because of this resonance, because the parasite forces them into it. And I don't know if Ruby Dixon intended that, because the first 50 pages of the first book is actually a proper sci-fi horror in tone as well. It has needs for trigger warnings that aren't in the book, and it kind of low-key pisses me off that you're going to put an on-page rape scene but not have a trigger warning when that scene is literally like within the first 30 pages of the book. Come on. But anyway, I really want to continue with this series and make a proper, full, entire long-form video essay on it, but I would need to reread the books that I have read, taking notes, and then finish the series entirely. So that's going to be like a whole thing. It might not be till like the end of summer when I have a lot of time. And also, as I film this, the entirety of the series in ebook form has been taken down from Amazon for some reason, and I'm not sure why. But I'm hoping I can find a different way. Maybe they'll be brought back up in ebook form on a different site. But I want to do the Blue Alien Smut Books or Sci-Fi Horror actually video essay so bad. Just so bad. Next up, the award for the book that taught me the most when I was not expecting it goes to His for Hanukkah by Rhys Morrison. When I first looked at this Hanukkah queer erotica, I was not expecting a ton in the way of actual education. Obviously, I read nonfiction. Obviously, I expect some books to educate me. But this one, I was like, oh, fun. I'll add it to my holiday erotica TBR because I don't want it to be all Christmas. And then, lo and behold, this book. So, this book was written with purpose. The author is creating an entire series based on queer romances set around Jewish holidays, and Hanukkah was just the start of it. As far as I know, you can actually read the entire series in any order because they are not all strictly related to the same characters, but are instead related in theme. But this is all about a young Jewish man who is very upset at feeling left out because he loves being Jewish and loves Hanukkah, but feels like it's taken over. And he accidentally vents all of his frustration at the BDSM club he goes to in front of Tate, this dom that he's had a crush on for a while. But Tate thinks that Adam actually doesn't like him because he doesn't like his transness or like has an issue with his transness. But then it comes out that no, Adam's just really shy and it's okay. And then things happen and there are Hanukkah traditions and they fall in love, like obviously. But that's like all I was expecting. Like maybe like you light the menorah once and then we move on. I was not expecting Adam to be this fount of knowledge, not only for the idea of Hanukkah and the history behind it, but also like the greater Jewish community and how I did not know this. Apparently Hanukkah is like not as big a holiday as other holidays in the Jewish calendar. Like they're like, oh, it's like the Jewish Christmas, but no, there's other holidays that are actually bigger than Hanukkah. And in general, it was really cool. And there were all of these extra side notes about it. And there was also a lot of talk about Tate's bottom surgery. And you got to see a little bit on exactly how that worked and both the limitations and the benefits of it. I loved that. There was also a little bit more talk on the BDSM community as a whole. And I loved that. And I'm like, wow, was not expecting all of this learning in this holiday erotica. But it was really good. I liked it a lot. It was like one of the standouts from that entire TBR. And I am definitely going to continue with the series. Although I am going to have to like hurry up and make sure that I know when the next Jewish holiday comes, because I would love to spend the entire year this year reading those books around the holidays they're set in. I feel like that would be fun. But again, I don't know that much about Jewish holidays, but these books I'm sure will teach me. These books probably can't win this award again because now I'm expecting it. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should actually look up other nonfiction books about Judaism, but it would also be fun to learn more from erotica books. I decided that this video should be longer than what the limited storage on my phone can hold. So we're doing a second session. Say hello to my new shirt and slightly damp hair. Let's jump in. The next award that we are awarding in this weird award show is for the book that forever altered how I view a beloved cultural icon. And this one has to go to Santa Claus is Going to Town on Me by M.L. Eliza. This is exactly what it sounds like. As a matter of fact, this is the book that inspired me to do a holiday erotica TBR in the first place, and it is every bit as delightful as I was hoping. Now, this does do some things a little different with the Santa mythos, like a lot of Santa stories do. It answers questions like, okay, are there elves? What about the elves? How does Santa know what people want? What about Mrs. Claus? And that was a big thing. I'm like, Santa better not be a cheater. He's not. It's fine. But I was really impressed specifically with the fact that it made Santa sexy. Like, obviously you're not going to write an erotica where both people aren't sexy, but when I mean it made Santa sexy, I mean that it made it buffed him up slightly, like he had kind of bulky arms, but he wasn't suddenly a dude with a six-pack. He still looked vaguely older-ish, kind of Silver Fox style. And he still had a more rounded stomach. Think more Rise of the Guardians Santa, which, I mean, most people already accept as a DILF, so not that far of a stretch to make an erotica with him. But I was just surprised by how much it literally warped my view, to the extent where a little while after I'd read it, still in the holiday season, I was at our usual farmer's market breakfast place, and they were having a Santa meet and greet. And I couldn't look at the Santa. And I was like, God damn you, M.L. Eliza. How dare you? It was great and also horrible. I could have put another one in here because I did also, for that TBR, read a Krampus erotica. But the thing is that, Krampus already has, the darker side to begin with, and he's not quite as much, well, not at all as much of a beloved cultural icon as Santa Claus is. And also, this is gonna sound weird, it's not as big of a leap for me to see a Krampus erotica than a Santa erotica, because I don't know why. Don't just ignore me. Regardless, it was really this one that just changed how I viewed the entire concept. And now I'm thinking to myself, I should rewatch Rise of the Guardians. And our last award for 2021 is the book that shows a wheelchair user kicking ass. And I know what you might be thinking, Margaret, no, that's way too niche. You're never going to find another book with that premise. And to that I say, the winner of this award is not even the first book I have read with this premise. Shout out to Survival Kit by A.H. Haga. Side note, Miss Haga, I do see Type 1 Undead is up for review copies. Feel free to hit me up. Regardless, the award for this goes to Bellamy and the Brute by Alicia Michaels. This is a book I have been seeing pop up in my BookBub free deals forever. And I constantly put it off because I thought to myself, I do not need another Beauty and the Beast retelling unless it's sci-fi or queer. But regardless, I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's try it. It's written by a Black author, so there's probably a chance something's different. But I was a little anxious because our quote-unquote beast, Tate, in this story suffers from a chronic condition that is his thing that keeps him up in the house. It came out of nowhere, and there's a mystery attached to the spirits that supposedly put it on him. And I'm like, using chronic illness as lieu of a curse, how do I feel? Thankfully, it is handled fairly well. You find out that his illness actually does act strange in reference to other illness. It should be going into remission at times when it's not. It affects basically one half of his face, appears to be more sunken in because the fat and muscle underneath has I'm not sure where it has gone. It does say the name of the disorder, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. And the author does make sure to note that the family doesn't handle it well. But he should not be kept up in the second floor, third floor, whatever floor of this giant house like a monster. And that when he does eventually go into the world, the only people who are like, ooh, what's that, are the already villains of the story. But this is all about a young woman who gets a job in a big house as a babysitter and, date and fall in love and okay, cool, fine. But the reason that this is winning the award for Kick-Ass Wheelchair User Moment is actually for, I think you could call him the Lumiere insert of the story, Ezra. I'm not exactly sure what his position within the household is. Like, if this was a Regency era story, he'd be like the steward. So like whatever the modern equivalent, like kind of like a personal assistant, but also he seems to be like on top of everything running the household. And he is a wheelchair user. And he is your average wisdom-doling Lumiere insert as the story needs. And he's a very nice, well-rounded character. And he does also challenge a lot of stereotypes about wheelchair users. Like at one point, he looks to the protagonist is like, well, I gotta go to the gym. Because he goes to the gym, because he can do that. Well, later on in the story, all that gym going pays off because you got the Gaston and the cronies and they're doing stuff and this one dude is about to get away and Ezra's like, fuck you, no. Dives out of his chair, tackles the dude to the ground and like pins him. It was great. Loved it. And it also showed another stereotype, or rather breaking of another stereotype about wheelchair users, and that is he reveals to the protagonist that he can, in fact, use his legs to a certain extent. He is not fully paralyzed because, fun fact, most wheelchair users aren't fully paralyzed. They're actually usually some kind of chronic condition. And I believe, if I remember correctly, for him, it was a kind of muscular dystrophy that affects joints, I believe. And he has to use the chair to prevent falls, to prevent fatigue that could keep him from using his legs later, but he still has some use of them. And I loved this. I was very impressed, especially going into this being a little bit worried about how we were going to take chronic illness, that it was done super well. I loved the character of Ezra, and I loved that it was just accepted. This is a dude. He was well-rounded. He was a nice support character in the cast, a great Lumiere insert, and again, I used to read so many Beauty and the Beast stories that skip Lumiere inserts or Miss Potts inserts, and like, they're very important, y'all. You need to include them. Regardless, I really enjoyed that one, and I will probably check out some more of the author's work. This book will probably also be going on my books with disabled or neurodivergent characters in speculative or genre fiction, because I really liked it just that much. And that is it. All of these super niche indie awards for 2021. Yes, there were only 5, but this was kind of a last minute thing, and who knows, if I decide to bring this back next year for 2022, maybe I'll reuse some of these and come up with a bit more. But I would also love your super niche awards. If you can come up with anything that's like just a highly niche idea for a book, and the book that does it the best or did it the best for you in 2021, please put that down in the comments below. I would be super interested to hear about them. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.